Welcome to The Art of Becoming Whole, where we explore the edges of the human experience from the therapy room to the meditation cushion and beyond. We are your hosts. I am Kevin Stansbury, LCSW, licensed clinical social worker and psychotherapist.
And my name is Justin. I am an arrogant prick who's going to tell you about therapy. No, I'm a certified hypnotist. I'm training in hypnosis and advanced conversational hypnosis. Uh, and right now I'm in grad school to become a licensed psychotherapist. So I'm a therapist student.
Let's talk about the name. So the art of becoming whole. Hmm. Do you want to start?
I'm laughing because no, and my initial uh inkling or my initial unction action is wanting to be like, well, so what is, tell me more about wholeness and what does that mean to you? That's like my therapist, like, well, you tell me, like I'm not going to
Uh-huh.
say anything. I'm going to ask the question.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you can do that. We
sure,
can we can do that
sure.
to each other.
So we could just break it down, right? we could do we know all the tricks. Yeah, so like what does becoming whole mean?
Hmm. The easiest question. Um, I think that it's what everybody wants. When people come to whether they're coming to psychotherapy or they're doing psychedelic healing or they're getting into spiritual stuff or religion or whatever, I think that the foundational, to me, it's an impulse. There's like something baked into the core of my being that craves it. It just that is what it wants, and like that is what would be satisfying and fulfilling in life is being whole. But also, there's a whole conversation here about whether or not we are already whole.
Right. I was gonna maybe pose the question, right? It's like if we are becoming whole, are we ever going to get there? Right. But then
Yeah,
you're hinting at we're already whole. So I guess this is a paradox, or somebody else could call it a contradiction. Why why then go to psychotherapy or a spiritual retreat or psychedelic trip or any of these things if we are already whole?
yeah, good question. So I think that this touches on the both of our intentions for creating this podcast and the things that we're passionate about. They exist in what appear to be two separate worlds. There's the world of spiritual awakening and enlightenment and already wholeness, and then there's the world of psychotherapy and hypnotherapy and healing and becoming whole. And that these things, while they seem potentially at odds with each other, that they're actually part of the same thing and that they can exist at the same time. And so there can be this foundational truth that I think is true. And it's my experience that everybody, we are already whole. There isn't some fundamental flaw that needs to be fixed or something that needs to be changed. However, that's like on the level of our soul and um, on the level of spirituality or awareness or consciousness, that's all true. But then on the human level, there's the experience of relativity. So that's the absolute, and this is the relative. And on the relative side of the street, there is always change, and there's always progression, and there's always room to grow and improve.
Let me see what you think about this. Would you say it's accurate that although we are already whole, but there's this journey of discovering that and discovering, I guess you would use the word fractals. To me, there's like degrees or layers or whatever learnings and understandings in which we perhaps appropriate or integrate or discover or uncover the wholeness on a human level.
Yes.
Cool. Okay.
That sounds
I
great.
think yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
I'm gonna eat while we do this, by the way. I'm hungry.
Okay. I got you. It's well, it's lunchtime for you, right?
Yeah.
That's yeah. Um yeah, I think I could resonate with that. I kind of want to go back to something you were saying about there's something about you and I would say about me and I would argue about every single person that there's some pull or desire to become whole, whatever that means to them. Because I'm thinking
Mhm.
about people who are like either they're like super successful businessmen or they're really successful actors or musicians or whatever, like athlete or what have you. And we can look at one side and say like, wow, we really, really admire these people, these celebrities or really successful people on the top of their industry, because there's something to be modeled about them, right? But at the same time, um, some of these people, not all of them, but some of these people are pursuing that thing because there's some deep unconscious need that's not resolved and they don't feel whole. So they think unconsciously, if I get fame, if I get money, if I have this worldly success, somehow I will feel whole. And I don't think that's unique to just us, but I think it's a very human endeavor.
Correct.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
I got it correct. Yes.
Yeah,
I
and
passed the test. Go
I
ahead.
mean, and this, it's so uh endlessly fascinating to me because I mean, this is just our first, well, not really, not our first conversation, but like first recorded conversation. Um, and I feel all of these uh I don't know if it's like a web or just threads that spread out from these central subjects that we're talking about. There's like so much there. There's so much to touch on.
Yeah.
And um the first place that my mind goes is that, what you were talking about. It's like that aching for a sense of wholeness then drives people to come up with all kinds of ideas of how to experience that, how to fill the hole. There's like
Yeah.
this sense that there's something missing and I need to fill the hole and then I will be whole. And so I'll fill the hole with money, I'll fill the hole with recognition and fame, I'll fill the hole with a relationship, with drugs, with healing, whatever it
Mm.
might, with spirituality.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we can fill the hole with anything. And that's what basically everybody's trying to do. And that's what everyone who comes to therapy is trying to do. Almost everyone, at least. Everyone I talk to, they will, everybody starts with an identified problem. And if I fix this problem, maybe they don't actually believe that they will be whole. They might just think then I'll be a little better or something. But like, but that's the feeling of it. It's like if I fix this problem, this thing, this big fundamental flaw with me, then I will be whole. Life will be good. I'll be happy. Whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Things
Some
things
iteration.
things will be the way they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is something that's missing from psychotherapy, at least in a lot of circles. I know there are psychotherapists out there that include this as part of their framing, but I don't know how there aren't any widely used modalities or frameworks that I'm aware of that um, that address this fundamental paradox. Are there?
You're saying that the fundamental paradox of um that there is no problem.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean I don't know. I would have to do more research there. You tell me. Um, but I do. Part of me wants to like push back,
Do
and I
it.
understand what you're saying. So I guess I come more from that world of there is a problem that can be fixed generally. And I remember talking to one of my hypnotist friends, and he would have this like every day he would have this knot of anxiety in his stomach when he woke up. And he didn't realize how bad it is. It's almost like when you have like a bad toothache or something that you've had so long, and it's just like you don't even know how bad it is until it's gone.
Hmm.
And so he would have he had this for like years or decades. And then he finally got like a session and it went away. And he was telling me, I thought he was gonna tell me, like, man, if you think that, resolving this problem is gonna help you, I thought he was gonna say it's not. You just got to be like grateful or be in acceptance or whatever. But he actually said the opposite. He was like, if your intuition is like this thing is it's gonna be resolved and like you're gonna just feel better. You're right. I'm like, oh, okay. All right, there's something there. Um, yeah, kind of like, I was expecting the whole like, no, it's not gonna help. You just have to accept. But but I do think there are things that can, along with maybe I'm contradicting you, right? Along with this paradigm of uh, that you're already whole on a spiritual level. I do think there are things that you can do to fix certain things.
Yeah. So I think maybe some of it is about language. And um and when it comes to this, I think the language is important because so many people, they're saying the words, I have this problem and I want it to be fixed. And there isn't anything inherently wrong with that, I don't think. But it seems like on a subconscious level, what gets attached to that is there's something fundamentally wrong with me, which is a little bit different than actually there's nothing wrong with me and I'm fundamentally whole. However, there is a wound that needs tending to.
Mm,
So it is, you could call it fixing. It's
yeah,
like, if you have a wound and you're healing it, I guess you're fixing it. But it just has a different, there's like baggage associated with that I think perpetuates the idea that we are broken and fragmented.
mm,
Guess those are the same thing, broken and fragmented.
yeah. Two, yeah, similar words. Mm,
Because okay, so here's what I'm thinking. I like the analogy of a wound to a certain point. And what I like about it is that you could you could I don't know, just like attend to the wound superficially, but there's an infection in it. And so then that's not going to have the long-term results that you want to have. So you have to actually get down deeper. You have to scrape off the scab or whatever and get down into the raw place where the wound really is, where the infection really is. And then you can treat the infection. And when you treat the infection, then the body heals itself.
I see. I see what you mean.
So I really like that as an analogy um, to our psyche and our emotional body because to me it's the same thing. It's like there is something there and it needs to be treated, it needs to be attended to. When it's attended to, your system heals itself. I don't hear
Hmm.
anybody saying that in definitely not in mainstream psychology.
Yeah. No, well, I mean, I think they might actually like your analogy to an extent. And
Mhm.
then because, mainstream psychology sees, they don't even call it mental health anymore. It's behavioral health, things that we can observe and measure.
Boo.
Yeah. And the mental is just kind of coincidentally there, right? Um, so they would say, oh, yeah, it's just like a doctor. You go to a doctor, you take whatever antibiotic or thing, they diagnose you, and oh, you have this thing, and we're going to give you this pill or this ointment or whatever it is, and voila, you're fixed. And I don't think that's what you mean exactly. Like, oh, if we just do a little bit of CBT, right? This manualized CBT for 8 to 12 weeks, right? Managed care, give it to the, send it to the insurance system. Oh, yeah, we're doing this evidence based thing. We did the thing. We diagnosed this person. We gave them the solution, and now they're good. It may be true for some people, right? But I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure that's not what you're meaning in that analogy.
Yeah. I have this spot on my lip that I keep biting. It sucks. Now it's sticking out because I bit it so
Oh
much in the
no.
last 24 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I don't mean that exactly. I mean, I've had lately, I've had good doctors, which surprised me. But I've had a lot of bad experiences, but um, they seem to approach the body like that. It's like, well, let's give the body what it needs and remove, um, you know, something that's interfering with the body's healing processes,
Mm.
and then it'll heal itself. They don't say that, but that's essentially what they're doing. That's different than let's prescribe you a medication that suppresses the symptoms forever,
Right. No, I liked how you said that. Yeah, exactly.
which is
Yeah.
the same as psychiatric medication.
Right. Right. So you and I were talking about getting to the root cause.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So what's the root cause? You go.
Oh, okay. We might disagree on this.
I know.
Okay. Okay. Uh, so let me maybe give my spiel here, right? So
Mhm.
I look at things through the lens of a hypnotist. So as you mentioned, we have these wounds. Generally, they come from childhood. We internalize these wounds, um, and then we build defenses around them. Right? We have a persona or personas. Parts get formed to fulfill some kind of role, and they get this part of us. Sometimes it's locked away in our unconscious, so we're not very conscious about it. And if we can get back to, let me be careful with my words. If we can utilize our imagination and access the unconscious mind to then counteract that original event, uh, then theoretically the brain will heal itself, the nervous system will heal itself. The unconscious mind will bring its own resources. I guess in internal family systems, right? You tap into self energy, right? Um, so I would say the root cause is unknown. There is no like one root cause. I think I can guess, like generally speaking, it's in childhood, but only the unconscious mind knows what the root cause is. So I can't like prescribe like a here's an 8 week plan. You just do this, this, and this, and presto, you are now a whole person. It can help. It can give you kind of a framework to kind of to do things, right? And to make things maybe more clear. But ultimately, all of us are unique. So the root cause is unique to each person's unconscious, generally rooted in childhood.
Can I clarify what?
Yeah.
So you're saying the root cause of what?
Oh, fair enough. Any problem, actually.
Oh, okay.
Almost any problem. Almost. Like obviously I'm barring people like schizophrenia, psychosis, brain damage, right? I'm barring that type of
Mhm.
category. But for the rest of us, um, yeah, for any problem.
And maybe we can also
Sure.
rule out for the time being nutritional
Yeah,
deficiencies or gut
yeah,
health stuff. These some other physiological things that can actually create psychological experiences. Being in mold is another one.
yes, yeah. So ruling out any kind of medical etiology, although there are psychosomatic disorders that would mimic the symptoms of something that could be just strictly medical.
Mhm.
So, but yes, barring any kind of like it's just medical, strictly biology, strictly neurology. Um, so whether it's I'm addicted to drugs, whether it's I have panic attacks, whether it's I feel depressed, whether it's I uh, have some kind of OCD or something. Uh, that is all rooted in the unconscious, some kind of unconscious issue that is unresolved.
And so what you're saying is that the root cause of basically any psychological problem is typically related to some sort of trauma or dysfunction in childhood, that then the unconscious develops some sort of adaptation to deal with that,
Yeah,
which then, but it's unconscious, so it just gets stored in there, and then it affects the everything. It affects perception of self, other, the world, and
absolutely.
emotion and behavior and thought,
Yeah,
all of
yeah.
it.
Oh yeah, yeah. And oftentimes we don't even know that it's actually happening because it's so unconscious. Um, so yeah, let me try to elaborate on what you just said, like try to simplify. Because as I'm talking, right, I'm kind of uh articulating and being able to systematize my framework and my thinking. Um, yeah, so okay. Every symptom, and this is maybe where we agree. Every symptom, doesn't matter if it's anxiety, depression, whatever it is, it's actually a solution to a deeper problem.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah. Every symptom is actually your unconscious or your body, your mind's solution or attempted solution to something deeper.
I don't know if I 100% agree, but I at least 90% agree. So
Okay.
we'll just go with it for now.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Like if it was like so rather than saying that depression is this disease that you have to take this pill for and you're forever diagnosed with this thing called depression and it's apparently biological and that's it, you're just fucked for life. And you
Which
just
is that would be treating depression as its own cause almost.
right, exactly. And that's it's weird. Yeah, that's kind of how the system works. I'm not going to go on that, but yeah, yeah. So rather than saying it is this disease that it just simply has to be managed, we could ask and say, oh, okay, you're depressed, you're feeling these feelings and having these thoughts. I'm wondering what like your body and your unconscious mind is actually trying to tell you by these symptoms. I wonder why it's having these symptoms. So I like the idea of our emotions are actually just messengers, but we're not
Hmm.
always listening to what the message is, including myself, right? Guilty of that. We don't always listen. But if we listen, we actually get to build a relationship to our unconscious and untie, resolve the thing that was underneath that communication, that emotion, the symptom.
All right, can you hold that thought for 30 seconds?
Sure.
I'm eating an acai bowl and it's really cold and the temperature is cold and so now everything's cold.
Well, I have no idea what that food is. And oh, what?
Oh, acai. You're not hip, man. Got to get hip with the
I'm not a Californian, so I have no grid for anything.
ACAI and the I has like a little accent over
Oh,
it.
oh, is that how you pronounce it?
That's I guess I don't know. That's how
I had
yeah,
no.
I
Okay,
think so.
all right. So okay. Like I've always pronounced it like a kai or a sai or something. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's acai. That's what all the cool kids say.
Oh, I've heard it both ways. No, I haven't.
But it's got lots of good nutrients in it. These I love making these bowls. It's like acai and oh shit. Hold on. Acai and I just do like a bunch of different berries and I just get all kinds of nutrients. But it makes me cold.
Really? Oh, because it's a cold
It's
drink or
yeah, it's like a step below a smoothie.
I
It's
gotcha.
like thicker than a smoothie.
Yeah.
Okay, so emotions as messengers. And we're still talking about the root cause.
The root cause. Yeah. The elusive uh I don't know the word. Elusive is the best one. Elusive root cause.
Okay. Hmm. Yeah, and I think this one of the reasons why I love talking to you is that we agree mostly, and where we disagree, it's interesting. Um, like it sparks my curiosity and it makes me I I think there are pieces of the puzzle that I'm naturally gonna miss. Um, I think that I think everyone is gonna miss something. We can't be some perfect being that has the perfect frame and solution for everything. But like, um, yeah, I like that approach. I like that you like it. This it could you would you is it fair to say it's a problem solution approach?
It is. It is a problem solution approach.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like our conversations for the maybe the opposite reason because I when I come away from our conversations, um, I almost feel your energy or your I don't know essence sounds kind of weird, um, but the energy and I feel like there's some deeper part of me that's like, oh, this is true. I just need to figure out how to incorporate this.
This being whatever I'm talking about.
Yeah, the more like of a non-dual approach, like you're already whole and there is no problem. Um, and it's really just the the matter that you're holding on to, right? That type of thing.
This is why I think that we can just have endless episodes of this because
I hope.
um because my mind just went off on a million different tangents that I was just like, oh, I could go that way, I could go that way. There's so many different things to talk about here. I think it's important that we address this word that you use, non-duality,
Sure.
for our listeners. easiest word to define. Um, oh, well, okay, just starting with the simple definition, non-dual is what it sounds like. It's not dual. But when we're talking, well, what's dualism? What does that mean for something to be dual? That means there has to be a this and a that. There has to be separation. There has to be a subject and an object, a me and a you, or me and this microphone, me and my coffee, me and my body, me and my thoughts, all of it, subject, object, relationships. You with me?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, but all of that exists in this world of duality. And um and that's what we were talking about earlier with the difference between the absolute and the relative. And in the absolute, we're already whole. In the relative, we're becoming whole, becoming more whole over time. Um, that, what was I just saying? Absolute, relative. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. That um, in order to become whole, there has to be separation. And
Right.
things have there has to be a dualism. There has to be a something that's me and something that's not me, so that I can become what's not me, or whatever.
Right.
What I am currently not.
Okay. I was like,
That's
oh,
what I
got you.
mean.
I was like, huh? You're becoming not you. Aren't you supposed to become more you? Or yeah. Okay.
I mean like if we're developing a skill, it's like, well, I don't have that skill presently.
Right.
And and then I develop the skill and then I have it. So I'm trying to become something that I'm currently not, which is in possession of that skill. So that is all dualism. And there's a lot of truth in dualism, in approaches that, I mean, it's like you have to, we live, we live in dualism. So you have, if you're not living in dualism, you are either in uh, hmm, I'm arguing with myself. Okay, well, this might not be right, and there may be exceptions to this, but generally speaking, if you can't live in dualism at all, then you are currently in a psychotic state, or you are in at least a non-functional state. Actually,
Okay.
psychotic state would typically, it's like a lot of chaotic dualism, actually,
Right.
but just non-functional. And if you've done high dose psychedelics and your ego's dissolved, you know what I'm talking about. Because you become non-functional. Potentially you can't even move. Or if you can, it's very sloppy.
Well, that's what happened when I took shrooms.
Uh,
Although I don't think my ego dissolved. It was just very hard to move.
okay. Well, maybe it loosened.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I have memories, lots of memories of different psychedelic experiences where it feels impossible to find my chapstick, you know.
Just lost in shroom space in the shroom world,
Yeah.
never ending shapes that it's lost.
Yeah. And yeah, yeah, I don't know. So anyway, it's necessary to be able to exist in the appearance of dualism, which is what the world appears to be, what life appears to be, is dualistic. That's what it appears to be.
Mhm.
And even, Adyashanti has said that a lot. I think other spiritual teachers say it a lot. They say it like this, it appears to be dualistic. I like saying it like that too, because I think that's true. I think that on the surface, that is what it appears to be, and that is how we experience it mostly. But there's this other idea that we can wake up to the experience of non-dualism, non-separation, unity, wholeness, oneness. But where a lot of people go off the rails with that too, and they're actually still in the realm of dualism, is they think that if we're one, that means we're not two. I just wanted to give
Isn't
you
it?
I just
Is
wanted to
I
give
mean,
you
isn't it? Doesn't that mean?
That's what it sounds like. But think about that. If we are all one and we're not two, we're excluding two, so now we're dualistic. Because if two was part of one, that would be non-dual.
uh,
Let's
I
maybe I
don't.
can maybe I can
Yeah.
give a more concrete example.
Okay.
Um, I don't know if I can actually, but it's like it sets it up. If dualism just means that there's an either or present. It's either me or it's you.
Hmm.
It's either dual or it's non-dual.
Hmm.
That's still dualism. I mean, yeah, that's still dualism.
Right.
So if you're only choosing non-dual, but you're excluding the dual, you're saying separation isn't real, it's only one. You just made a dualistic statement. Whereas a non-dual
So,
statement,
yeah. But then, how can you make a non? Okay. How could you possibly make a non-dual statement?
well, I guess the non-dual statement, uh, it's that's where both ands are. It's not either or, it's both this
And
and that.
more.
Huh?
No, I know a coach who says it's not either or, it's both and more.
Yes. Yeah,
Little
yeah.
rhyme. Yeah. And I
And
stole that. So,
right, and it's so it's like that. So it is both. I disagree with this before I even say it, but it's both non-dual and dual. The reason I say I disagree with that is because that frames it as if they are equals. And I maybe I think they are, maybe I don't. I'm not quite sure. But the way how I think about it is that non-dual is the foundation.
hmm.
You know, I just call it God, but
Hmm.
divinity, um, consciousness. Well, to me, divinity and consciousness is, I mean, divinity and God are more accurate because I don't think it's just consciousness. I think there's more. Um, what was the rhyme you just said? Both and more.
Yeah.
Both and more.
Right.
But anyway, getting into the weeds a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, this is a
Uh,
deep subject. So,
yeah. Uh, but that this is the ground of all reality. It is what the appearance of separation, everything that appears to be in existence, arises from this non-dual ground of being, not only arises from it, but is made up in it and exists within it. It is completely saturated by it. And so it's like in a way we could say the non-dual is primary and
hmm.
the
Hmm.
dual arises from that, but
Hmm.
also in a way the dual is the non-dual, so it becomes meaningless.
So let me clarify. By it, you mean God or divinity, spirit? What is this it that is foundational to all reality?
Um, it's when we stop thinking and we're just here, we're just being, and it's silent and still, but aware and awake. And then for some reason, there's this element of unconditional love that's there. And I've heard, well, this Buddhist teacher, Daniel P. Brown, he called it. awareness love.
Mm. Hmm.
And so to me, God is that and more. That the, awareness
Sure.
love, I would say, there's an absolute intelligence in it, but an awareness love with an absolute intelligence that is also a creative force. It creates life
Hmm. Mm.
constantly.
And so that this is the foundation of all appearance of reality, you would say.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Well, yeah.
and just to make it more practical, because I think it becomes something that can feel abstract. It sounds abstract just saying it.
Yeah.
Um, but it's not. It's foundational to experience. The only reason we miss it is because it's so foundational, because it's too simple. I know all the spiritual awakening teachers, they talk about this all the time. It's like you think it's this complex thing, but it's not. It's really, really,
Hmm.
really simple. And so people who are like, I'm enlightened or I'm awake and they're really proud of it and whatever, they treat it like it's a big deal. It's not, because once you have the quote unquote experience, then you just see that it was always there anyway,
Hmm.
and then you could just
So
forget about it.
what's the point of becoming enlightened?
Oh my God. What's the point of becoming enlightened? Enlightened meaning, I think we probably both share the same definition. So enlightened or spiritually awake, um, these mean to be able, it's a direct seeing of reality as it is.
Okay. Okay, interesting. I've actually never heard that definition.
Oh.
I don't think. Maybe I didn't search hard enough. But yeah, okay, great. Okay, I like that.
Yeah, a direct seeing of reality as it is, and reality as it is non-dual. So it's a direct, it's not an experience, it's the foundation of experience, but it's a direct seeing of it. And and more. I don't claim to be enlightened. I think that I don't know, it's like I don't care anymore.
Hmm.
I used to care so much about it, like to wake up spiritually, and I would think about it all the time.
Hmm.
And I still think about spirituality and the divine and myself and all that, but I just don't care about whether or not I'm enlightened or awake or whatever. It's like,
So, yeah. So if you don't care about being enlightened, for the, average person out there, or perhaps a potential, someone who's listening, who's spiritually curious, therapy curious, whatnot, why should this person care about what we're talking about with like non-dual and God and these abstract concepts? It's like, okay, enlightenment, why care? Yeah, why care about all these abstract topics like non-duality and enlightenment?
so yes, great question. And this is something I'm really passionate about is I think that maybe I don't care about the words enlightenment or spiritual awakening. I think that they have too much baggage now. And it just people have made it mean too much, and it's yeah, it's just it's too it's like the word ego. Like what does it even mean anymore? We don't know.
I know.
Um so I think I prefer saying seeing reality as it is. Um, but I think what that means is seeing yourself as you are. understanding the nature of yourself.
Hmm.
That's when I'm talking about spiritual awakening, or if I use these words, spiritual awakening, enlightenment, God, the divine, all of this stuff, that it has to do with understanding, not just understanding on a cognitive level, but feeling it, embodying it, living it, um, that this is your fundamental nature. And why does that matter? Well, it matters because everybody that comes to therapy thinks that they have a problem that needs to be fixed, and they will just be on that ride forever unless they open up to this possibility, this possible reality that actually you are fundamentally whole. And not only that, but you have divine wisdom that permeates the entirety of your experience. That creates a completely different context for healing because then it's not like, I don't know, it's not like you have to, it's not like you have to figure it all out. You don't. You can trust this divine wisdom to do it for you. All you have to do is learn how to how to get out of the way of that. That's what I think therapy is about. And that's where I agree with you when it comes to some of um these like hypnotherapy things that I don't know how to do, where you're directly addressing the unconscious. It's to me it's kind of the same as what I do. It's just a different angle, but you're just removing something that's in the way. And then once it's out of the way, then the person can thrive. Their system
Hmm.
can heal
Uh,
itself.
yeah, I'm almost thinking like the analogy that you used, but like thinking about like there's almost like a thorn, right, in your side, and you're going to, I don't know, a doctor who specializes in thorn removal and removes the thorn, and then like all of a sudden you're like good again, and it'll heal itself, and you put a band-aid and voila.
Yeah, the difference being, I think, with psychotherapy is I don't remove the thorn from my clients. I I'm not even sure they remove the thorn. It's
Oh,
like
interesting. Okay.
something removes the thorn.
I may or may not agree.
Me too. Let me think. Let me flesh it out. So, hmm, I believe this more and more over time that the identified problem isn't what needs attention, and that people giving the identified problem attention keeps them locked into a negative relationship with the thing, with the experience. So, for example, anxiety. Somebody has anxiety. Let's say it's social anxiety or sex anxiety, whatever. They have that kind of anxiety. They think this is the. Let's stick with sex anxiety because it's a common one. They think that this is the most important problem that I have. And if I could just figure out how to solve this, then I'll feel everything will be fine. That's like they might not believe that cognitively, but it's a feeling. If I could just fix this thing, and they get fixated on fixing the thing, and this is the problem, that I can't keep my cock hard. This is the problem. Or I get up in my head during sex. This is the problem. So let's fix the problem. But when I'm talking with somebody who is saying all of that, what I'm hearing is I'm ashamed that this experience exists. I shouldn't be experiencing this resistance. You're resisting the reality of what is, and you're judging yourself for what is. And I hate myself for this, and I hate that this thing exists. Just negative relationship to the experience. And if this experience, as you described earlier, and I agree with, connects, the roots of it connect back to some sort of childhood shit, most likely. We could get into like past life stuff maybe, but like we'll just stick with the simple one life thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that it connects to some sort of childhood dysfunction, trauma, attachment stuff, whatever. Then what's actually happening when that person is relating to this experience in a negative way and saying that this shouldn't exist is they're saying to their inner child who is struggling in that moment, you shouldn't exist.
Ah,
And so coming from that place, it just reinforces the identity that is hooked into it all. That this means something about me. And it can only mean something about me if fundamentally I am separate and flawed. If I knew that actually this experience is that divine wisdom permeates this experience, then I would know that, oh, I just need to stop fighting it and get still enough to listen to what it's trying to say to me. Like you said about emotions being messengers,
yeah.
emotions or experiences are messengers, and there's wisdom in it. But the immediate assumption that almost everyone seems to have, at least in the West, I don't know if it's the same in Eastern cultures. I've heard Buddhist teachers make comments about how Western people are way more likely to be critical of themselves. I don't know if that's true though,
Yeah, I'm
because
not.
there's so much shame in the East too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very honor shame culture.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's just what I've heard people say. But anyway, it seems like everyone that I talk to has this thing where the assumption is that I'm separate and there's something wrong with me. But again, it's not that I entirely disagree with the frame of problem solution, but just that there's so much attached to it, and then it gets attached to our identity. It's like this core sense of self and meaning about the thing. When it's like, okay, so your dick isn't getting hard. What could that mean? I mean, there are a bunch of factors that could play into a situation like that, and we'll have like a whole episode or maybe multiple on this thing in
On this
particular.
specific on ticks getting hard.
Yes.
Next
Yeah.
episode. Stay tuned. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got lots to say about dicks. And oh yeah, so there can be many factors involved, but outside of some sort of physiological cause, some sort of a problem with excessive environmental toxins or hormonal imbalances, outside of all of that, it has to do with you not trusting your body, you not trusting that there's some sort of wisdom in this experience, that your
Hmm.
body is actually
Hmm.
telling you something, and usually something wise. It's telling
All right.
you examples, it's telling you that um, you're not being present right now. It's telling you you're not connected to your desire. It's telling you you're worried about her experience more than you're connected to your own desire. Or it's telling you that she's not being present.
Hmm.
and that she's up in her head and that she's doing something performative, um, or she's too focused on the outcome. So you could be picking up something about that's going on internally. You could be picking up something that's going on externally, but we're very sensitive instruments. And especially our cocks. And then they just reflect the reality of what's happening. Or what I think is a big one is it picks up on a dysfunctional dynamic, usually codependence. And so, yeah. So it's not a problem. It's actually your cock is doing something really smart. And then if you know that, if you have this frame for understanding that, then the approach becomes entirely different because it's no longer about how do I fix this problem with my cock, or how do I fix this problem with me getting up in my head during sex. It becomes about what the curiosity of, well, what is my body? What is this experience telling me? And then if it's telling you some of those things I listed, then you can address those things.
Feel like I can go with different angles, but what I'm thinking is, and you probably, well, you might agree or disagree. Who knows? Language. But I'm hearing from like, because I also kind of view things from a new thought perspective,
From
and
a
I can
new,
explain that. I can explain that. Well, new thought and hypnosis are really tied together. So like the new thought movement, um, essentially birth positive thinking. They started to connect the dots about, oh, wait a second, if we think positive, wait, this, there can be solutions. That the divine is actually within you. So you need to align your thinking to what divinity is the truth, and blah blah blah. If you do that, that's the solution, or that's the root of your problem. If you do that, cool. Um, but I'm thinking like when you talked about all those issues about when you hear somebody talking about, I guess in this sense, like their dick can't get hard, and I hate this problem, right? I must resist it, and that's like basically resisting your inner child. And there seems to be these layers of issues. So there's like the anxiety on top of the anxiety, which is actually underneath, which is shame. And then there's like another, there's another layer, right? There's like all these layers. And I'm also hearing like, okay, it seems like the enemies are fear, doubt, and insecurity. And because those are there, and those, well, yeah, I guess here, yeah. Because those are there, we just have to remove it, and then all there's left is yourself, your authentic self. And I'm not sure if you agree or disagree. I feel like we're coming at this with very different angles.
okay, wait.
Yeah.
I think um maybe I stopped listening.
All good, all good.
Okay, so can you
Yeah, I guess like what I was hearing a little bit, because you said a lot there, but I was thinking like, oh, it's like the problem is not that the symptom, the dick not getting hard or whatever it is.
uh-huh.
The problem is the fear, doubt, insecurity
Mhm.
that's held on. And as long as soon as we just remove that, and then there's only abundance, and there's only curiosity, courage, all the C's of self, blah blah blah. Right? I forget them. Uh, Connection. Right?
Mhm.
And I know maybe the word enemy is not great in a sense sometimes, right? Like we want to accept the experience of the fear, doubt, and insecurity, and by accepting them, we paradoxically then remove them and then connect.
Yeah, and maybe that's my issue with the word problem,
Mm.
because I think it's almost impossible for us to use the word problem without attaching enemy to it. If it's a problem, it's an enemy. If it's an enemy, you have to wage war against it. If you're waging war against it, to me, that's inner conflict.
That's David Goggins. That's his world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, so maybe you fear, doubt, and insecurity. It's like I almost don't even want to say in this instance that those are a problem because they're just messengers, but it's understanding the message. Maybe maybe we could
Yeah.
say that if there's a problem, the problem is the translation, the faulty translation of the message.
Yeah. And I was going to say also, like, maybe the problem is not inherently of the experience of fear, doubt, and insecurity, but the attachment to those things, perhaps, and the identification of that. Would you say that's accurate?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think this is why the non-dual stuff is so important to me because everything to me comes back to identity and your identification with your experience. If you're identified with it, you can't be in relationship to it.
Interesting. Can you say that again? Because I feel like that's really important.
Yeah, if you're identified with your experience, you're merged with it because it is you. It's your identity. It is you. You're identified with it. So you're merged with it. If you're merged with something, in a way, it's non-dual, you could say. That's like a pre-trans fallacy thing where it's like you're non-dual, but not in a conscious way. It's unconscious merging with a thing, unconsciously merged with this experience, with the identity of this experience. And so then there's only that, which means you can't be in relationship to it because you are it.
Hmm.
So you have to be able to actually separate yourself from it, seeing that it's not you, it's something that's happening within you. Then you could start to be in relationship to it.
Got it. Got it. I think yeah, I understand. So something like mindfulness meditation or other practices like that help us to make that separation. So now we can actually be in relationship to that thing and see it for what it is.
Yeah.
We're not how did this one guy word it? I really liked it. We're not looking through the pain, but we're simply looking at it.
Yes. Ideally.
Yeah. Yeah.
The difficulty, one of the many difficulties, I think, with this is that when you're in pain, you're in pain. And I don't think it's as clean as, I don't know, maybe it is for some people, but I'm not a meditation master. And so for me, if I'm witnessing something, if I actually can experience that separation, which is interesting because, you know, we talk about non-duality and that's about oneness and not being separate, but actually it's incredibly important to be able to separate yourself from certain things in order to see reality clearly. You know, if everything was about becoming one, you would think you wouldn't have to do that, or that that would actually be harmful because actually you should just be focused on becoming one. But actually, you need to separate yourself from the contents of
Yeah.
experience.
And this is where maybe some of my reservations about this whole like I need to be enlightened and the spiritual path of non-dual awakening and my reservations are it seems that in that type of thinking in the west in the east, sorry, in the east, it's all about oneness and ego, dissolving the ego. And I'm not important. I'm nothing. I'm nothing. Right. I have to be one. Whereas in the Western side of psychotherapy, it's actually almost the opposite. It's no, no, no. You need to be a person. You need to individuate.
Mm.
You need to differentiate. You need to be your authentic self, right? You need to not be codependent. So like it's almost like these two seemingly conflicting worlds and
Mhm.
philosophies.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's why, and people have been trying to do this for, well, a lot more in the last 20 years, I think. They've been trying to create bridges between these things, with more or less success. But that's like do they call it the third wave of psychotherapies? The Eastern based ones.
I think, yeah, it is third wave. Yeah, you're right.
So like ACT,
Yeah,
acceptance and commitment therapy, mindfulness based stress reduction, DBT,
yeah,
all those things. It's like they're trying to create this bridge, but I I don't know. I'm not I have a lot of DBT experience. I'm not an ACT expert. I guess mindfulness, but whatever. I don't know about the people who created these modalities and if those people have had spiritual awakening experiences and then we're like trying to include that in there. I don't know, but it doesn't show up very obviously in the material, at least in DBT.
yeah. Do you, okay, sorry to side note because I'm
Mhm.
like, you just reminded me of something. So there's this really amazing NLP trainer named Connie Andreas, and she's written books and she hosts workshops and all of that. And uh, in a nutshell, NLP is a lot of things, but in a nutshell, it can be used as a modeling technology. Um, Essentially, you can model someone like a spiritual teacher and kind of get all the principles and embody that in, I guess, a quicker way, more efficient way.
Mhm.
And she's taking NLP and mapped NLP over, or yeah, mapped it over to learn about spiritual awakening from, I think, that's Maharishi, whoever that is. I'm not familiar
I
with
don't know.
all these people, but Maharishi. And she's actually like created her own, essentially, if you almost like a system of, if you want to be whole, happy, kind of model these type of spiritual teachers and their awakening and their enlightenment, you can actually, there is actually kind of like almost like a step-by-step thing that you can do. And I was reading some of her book, but I jump around.
Interesting.
Yeah. And
So,
she's had her life changed by modeling this type of work, by doing that.
uh
Yeah. And
oh,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So, oh yeah. So there are people out there who've been engaged in this endeavor. I know some people more in the like the Zen world where there's like specific Zen community that was focused on shadow work as an accompaniment to spiritual awakening practices and stuff like that. And so it's out there, but there isn't something that is more, I mean, definitely not more mainstream, um, or more widely understood and used. The importance of this stuff is not understood. It's not taught in schools unless you go to Naropa or CIIS or something.
Well, I guess from what I understand, mindfulness is being taught sort of in like elementary, right? I thought it was.
In elementary school?
Yeah, like
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
like teaching it through emotional learning or whatever it is. Something like
Yeah.
that, sort of.
And here's where maybe I'm being an asshole, but like I just think this is just the case. This is what
Yeah,
happens when an ancient esoteric practice uh, comes into the mainstream and people start using it. It gets watered down. It's
yeah,
missing, it's actually missing essential ingredients, and the people teaching it don't even know what it's missing. They don't even know
fair enough.
what the real thing is.
Right. Yeah. Once it becomes mainstream, then people productize it. It's capitalism. It's all about quick fixes, marketing. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and now
I get it.
meditation is a fucking stress reduction technique.
Right.
That's what it's sold as.
Right.
Relaxation.
I know. Right.
And the funny thing is, I don't entirely disagree with that. I think in a absolute way, it is about relaxation. It's about relaxing into the truth of yourself or
Right.
relaxing into your natural ability to see what's true. So it is about relaxing, but that's a very different thing than you just take some deep breaths and then you can feel a little better.
Right.
No,
Right.
no, that is not what meditation is for. I mean, sure, go ahead and do it. I don't care. If you want to relax, relax. Cool. But that's not what mindfulness is. So, yes, I am happy that it is moving in this direction because I think that's the only way that it's going to reach more people. And it's like people will start on this basic bitch level of meditation and mindfulness, which is fine. Sorry. Um,
Yeah.
sorry
It's
for the
kind of
judgment.
a double-edged sword, right? It's like it's great, it's mainstream, but yeah,
Well, but also, is it really? Well, let me finish my first thought and then I'll go
yeah, yeah,
back to
yeah.
criticism. So the good part is that it creates a doorway for someone who may get into the this simple simplistic presentation of it, and then they might get curious about it, and then they might actually go to the source material and
Right.
learn from people who know better. They know it on a deeper level, and so it's a much more accessible pathway than it's ever been in the West. And that's great. Great. Going back to criticism now, that it, um, oh, yeah, that uh, almost 100% of people who aren't actively involved in spiritual communities and have a lot of training in meditation think that they can't do it. They think that they're doing it wrong because of all of the bad teaching out there. The apps, everything. It's not, and some of these are actually, to me, they're actually good meditations, but they're only good if you understand what meditation is, and no one's explaining it well.
Now I'm wondering if I'm actually explaining it well at all, and if I know anything. I'm no meditation expert. Uh, now I'm wondering, oh shit, maybe I'm explaining it wrong. Uh, on a total tangent side note, we return because as you were talking about that, are you familiar with Dr. K?
No.
Really? Healthy gamer, GG gamer, healthy GG gamer.
Wait, maybe. I mean,
He's like an
if
Indian,
if so, I think so, but just barely. Like I've seen
barely.
one or two
Okay.
things.
Got you. He's like well, he streams and like he has like a YouTube channel and he's like very popular. He's like several million subscribers, I think. But he's a Indian psychiatrist. And
I'm
what I
looking I'm looking
like
him up.
about him is um he's taking these alternative type of therapies like meditation and these Eastern practices, yoga. He does like Ayurveda, however you pronounce it, all these like Indian stuff, and he's kind of like taking the best of that and like the taking the best of the Western world and kind of combining it. And he's also kind of like, yeah, I think he's doing it in a way that's I think that's helpful.
Hmm.
Um, and he reminded okay, you reminded me of him because he's also kind of saying the same thing. He's like, dude, like people are not being taught meditation the right way, or they're not being taught these different kinds of meditations that are like maybe they aren't right for a certain person, but they are right for another person. So like some, for example, someone with ADHD, they're being told like that you just have to focus on the breath and you just have to, watch your thoughts. And it's like it's impossible for them. And so they give up. They think, okay, meditation's not for me. It's like, no, dude, there's like hundreds of different meditations. Try this meditation that's actually geared for to you. And they try it and like it works for them, right? So like I guess he's because he's Indian, right? He's got connections and he went to almost become a monk and blah blah blah. That whole
Mm,
that whole spiel. So he's
yeah.
taking that stuff and he's like making it more. He's making more mainstream. So
Good. Yeah, cool.
yeah,
Because yes, people think that they often associate with meditation this sentence, quiet your mind, or still your mind, or something like that. And then they're like, well, I can't. I guess I suck at this. It's not working. Done. Yeah, well, terrible instruction. It's terrible instruction. Quiet your mind. I mean, again, it's like it's not a terrible instruction for someone who's already experienced at meditating. If someone tells me to quiet my mind, I'll just do it.
right, right,
And then I'm like,
right,
yeah, this works for me.
right.
But um but someone who's just starting,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they'll be able to quiet their mind if they're lucky, but probably not. I mean, almost everybody won't be able to. So it's so th- yes, and there are also so many different types of meditation. But if I just focus on mindfulness, which I often do, um, mindfulness, the definition of mindfulness is being aware of what is happening in the present moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you are breathing, you try to be aware of that. If your mind comes in and takes you away and you're lost in thought for 1 minute, 30 seconds, 5 seconds, 5 minutes, the whole meditation, whatever, at some point you're going to notice what's happening. And when you notice what's happening, then you can call yourself out on it. Oh, I'm lost in thought right now. That's mindfulness. You just became aware of what's happening in the present moment. And then you can bring yourself back to your breath. And that is it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the foundation of it. So the practice isn't about quieting your mind. It's about getting distracted and bringing your mind back and getting really good at knowing what's happening while you do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the better you get at that, I mean, you can do specific concentration meditations to get your concentration better, but um, but I'd say generally that the more you practice mindfulness, the more space you start to experience. And so
Right.
then it just happens over time.
Right. And so I guess going back to this idea of we are already whole, there is no problem. Us labeling it as a problem is a problem. For the person that is a beginner who's not advanced, because I'm thinking about my old self, and if we talked, I would have been like, cool, like I don't get it, and like so like how does this help me? And where was I going with this? It seems like the talk about non-duality and right creating this space, and we can if we simply just um, no longer label this as a problem, it almost seems like too advanced to a person that's just like just starting out. Much like a beginner, like you tell them, well, just quiet your mind, and like
Yeah.
that's good advice for some people, right? But like for the absolute beginner, it's not. So like,
Yeah, just disidentify from this and change your
yeah,
relationship to it and stop believing it's a problem.
exactly.
Just do it.
Right. And so yeah, I'm thinking about like shit, if when I was like that would have I would have been so pissed. um how how does this relate to someone who could be a beginner who's maybe curious about spirituality or psychotherapy? How is this relevant for them, and how can they start?
Yeah. Well, it's a great question. You have to start where you are. And if this stuff resonates for you, if it feels like maybe you don't totally get it mentally, maybe you do, but whether you do or not, there's something in you that is like, huh, like something about this feels right, even though I don't get it or whatever. Then, I mean, I think that's cool. I think that's like, that is your inner wisdom poking its head out and just being like, hey, there's something over here. Um, how do we move in this direction? And and then you can start, yeah, you just have to start where you are. So, I mean, it's going to be a different answer for everybody, but it's like you you have to start building awareness. Like no matter where you are, that's going to be the first thing anyway. So whether that is by going to therapy or that's by having blowout psychedelic experiences or that's by spiritual practice and meditation and listening to spiritual teachers or reading self-help books or whatever, like one of these things is going to be a doorway for you. And and then it'll just lead to another doorway and another doorway and then you'll and then now you're on a path. So I don't know. I don't it's not an easy question and I don't think there is not a cookie cutter answer, but that is my best answer that if anything in you resonates with it or at least is just curious about it, then that's enough energy coming up to move you in a direction. And then you got to do something to become aware of these things in your own experience. I mean, for me, the foundational thing and why just go without I could go without God, you know? I could just throw away God here. That I don't really do that, but that the relationship that you have with yourself is the most important thing. To me, there is no separation between the relationship I have with myself and the relationship I have with God. So, that becomes a different sort of thing. But but again, your question was about someone who's just getting into this, someone who's curious about it, that the place to start is to get better at paying attention to how you treat yourself. And it's interesting because I talk so much about trusting yourself and trusting this divine wisdom that lives and breathes in your body and your experience. But oftentimes, the place where you have to start is to doubt yourself. And what I mean by that is doubt, particularly doubt your self-image, because, this would be the case for, I don't know what the percentages are, at least half of people are more self-critical than other critical. I'm making that up, but
Yeah,
I feel like
I
that's
think.
true.
Well, I think that could be true. I think that people who go to therapy for sure, and so I guess that sample size is kind of biased, but I'm sure a good amount of people are very self-critical, me
Yeah, and
included. Yeah,
and you can be both too.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but the point there is that, if you tend to lean in the self-critical direction, which usually means I just disagreed with myself, so I won't say that. Um, yeah, just if you tend to lean in the self-critical direction, then uh well, actually, just anybody, just everybody. If you are critical of any of others or yourself, then you probably need to examine your self-image because you are either putting yourself in a position of superiority or inferiority and believing it. You believe it to be true. It's, um, I use this analogy a lot that it's like body dysmorphia. When you can have someone who looks in the mirror and when it's really severe, they are they might be anorexic or something and they're like 90 pounds, but they look in the mirror and they still think, God, I'm fat.
Right.
And it is a completely distorted body image. But almost everybody has a completely distorted self-image to different degrees, but it's definitely distorted. I don't know anybody that doesn't have a distorted self-image. Anybody. I've never met anybody. And I think that's, yeah, sure, it's anecdotal evidence, but I've met lots of people and interacted with lots of people, even more so on online. I've never talked to, interacted with, or seen anybody, even if I didn't interact with them,
Hmm.
that didn't appear to have a distorted self-image. So that is the best place to start. Is to
Hmm.
recognize that actually, because of the lenses that we wear, these unconscious lenses, we can't see ourselves clearly. And if you can't see yourself clearly, then, well, that's why it's often really important to work with somebody so that they can support you, they can act as a mirror that reflects a more accurate image back at you. And then you can start to feel the dissonance that, oh, like, my own self-image is like this. This person's telling me they're seeing me like this. You know, what's going on here?
Hmm.
Getting curious about it.
I think that's a good place to start. Curiosity.
Yeah. And that, I mean, to me, I just saw it somehow in my mind. The whole path is there. Because if you're curious about your self-image, eventually, if you take it far enough, then you have to the um, inevitable, it's not a conclusion, but the inevitable place that you will end up if you keep going and going and going with that line of curiosity is, what is the self? Who am I really? What does it mean to be alive? What is reality? You will eventually get there because if you're asking questions about your perception, then you have to get there eventually. If you want to, not everyone wants to. Some people, yeah, some people are just more practical, they just no, I just want to feel better. I just want to
Hey,
feel
that's
better.
me.
I just want to feel better. I just want to be happy. I just want good relationships. I don't care about the ultimate nature of reality. And that's
Yeah.
fine. That's fine. But yeah, but this is the I think that's maybe the best doorway is just that curiosity about the self-image
Hmm.
and the self-image and how the self-image relates to other images, like to the image of the other, because we project so much out onto others.
I don't know if I would actually say anything different. I mean, I'm just thinking of adjacent topics. Like what what is it that you want? I think is a good question to always ask, but for someone who's just starting out, like what do you want? What's stopping you? That's one of my favorite questions.
Hmm.
What's stopping you? And absolutely building awareness. For me, it was um, I couldn't feel. Like you could ask me like, what do you feel in your body? And I would do these meditations like headspace. Like, oh, well, just notice your feeling in the body. I'm like, I don't feel anything. And then the next day, I would try the meditation. Of course, I could barely focus. And then feel the feeling in your body. What feeling do you feel? I feel nothing. And this went on for a while. And that was because there was this giant defense mechanism of numbing out and don't feel and go into my head and intellectualize. And I would be so confused about I know it's not true. I know I should love myself. I know I should be confident. I know this, I know that. I know all these things. But why isn't it happening? Right? I just couldn't feel until, years of painfully unraveling that defense, right? And once that defense goes, well, all this feeling comes out in these waves, right? Not all at once, but like these bursts, these waves, and then it's like, oh crap, okay. So for some people, that awareness may lead to the ability to feel, and then well, the ability to heal. Um, Granted, that's not everyone. I hope it's not whoever's listening to this. I hope that that is not your defense mechanism, that you haven't repressed years or decades worth of lots of feelings. I truly hope that's not your case.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
it probably is.
But one could hope. Because I don't wish that on anybody. Um, that might be a start. And
I mean, isn't that
yeah.
the case for basically everybody? Repressed
Is it?
feeling.
I think for many people, because like repression's not the only defense, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but I guess it is super common. I'm just trying to think. I'm just trying not to like assume that everyone has is going to have my experience or is,
Sure.
you know, try not to project. I think I'm using that word properly. I know it has a very specific psychoanalytic definition. Um, yeah, I guess that is common.
I had some thought while you were talking. Oh, yeah, there it is. Um, that, and this I'm sure will be one of our conversations that we get more in depth about. But I was just thinking about the role that these different levels of being have in healing and in the psychotherapy process. And I was thinking about the body and how, these days the growing sentiment in the field is around somatic work and the whole body keeps the score
Mm-hmm.
thing
Mm-hmm.
and trauma informed care and all that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a piece of the puzzle, but I also think people can kind of focus on that too much or um, uh, downplay the importance of cognitive work because of that. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that they are all actually really valuable pieces.
It's interesting that you say that. Yeah, because and this is one of those instances where it's not either or, it's both and more.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I think you have to have both a cognitive approach and a somatic approach. I guess for people who are therapeutically curious and maybe they don't know what that means, what would be the difference in your mind?
Well, cognitive approaches would be, which largely that's all there was for, I don't even know how many decades. But cognitive behavioral therapy is the most popular one, probably, that it's on everyone's profile on psychology today. And but it's these types of therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy that focus on it, they focus on beliefs and patterns of thinking mostly, and how those beliefs and patterns of thinking create certain emotional experiences and behavioral expressions. And and yeah. And I would take it a little bit further in that this is the part of cognitive work that I love doing is it's about examining the meaning making system that you have. When something happens in your life, what's the meaning that you give it?
Hmm.
When you have a particular emotional experience, what's the meaning that you give it? What do you think is the purpose of all of this life thing? That those things to me, they're overarching cognitive frameworks that have far-reaching implications into the other levels of being.
Hmm.
Because, example, if you believe that it's a dog eat dog world and you just gotta get yours, you just gotta do whatever you gotta do to make sure that you survive, survival of the fittest, all that sort of stuff. To me, it's a pretty negative view of life, and it sets you up for particular experiences of suffering that it creates a binary. Everything's about winning or losing. And so then if you have an experience of losing, then you frame it as an experience of losing, and you might have a cascade of shame and guilt about losing, and it might be so much that it becomes a sort of depression. And so then right there, your meaning making system generated your experience of depression because of how you framed things.
Hmm.
So that's an example.
Yeah.
But what often gets left out in cognitive therapies is the somatic element that you can't, we talk about mental health and physical health like they're separate things, but they're not. Your body and mind are one thing. And your mind isn't just like floating up here, which a lot of people experience it like that. Like your mind is centered up in your head and around your brain or something. But your brain is your nervous system. Your nervous system spreads out throughout your whole body. Your mind is your body.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
So, and it's not just thoughts don't just exist out here exactly.
Yeah.
Um, we're talking about neural connections and the way that synapses fire and how your nervous system, the fight or flight response, how that gets activated, maybe underactivated or overactivated or whatever, and that all of the well, I'd say more it's feelings, but maybe even beliefs can be embedded in the body. And I don't know if that's actually the most accurate way of talking about it, but there is an interconnected experience of um, thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and body, physiology,
Yeah.
sensation, and so there are different doorways to address things at different levels. So you can take the cognitive approach, and that may actually affect your body. It could
Yeah.
that, if you address something on a cognitive level and it really sinks in, and then maybe it changes your emotional experience, then that's going to change your neurology and how your nervous system's functioning. And that can happen. But sometimes you need to, that's like a top-down approach. Sometimes you need to take a bottom-up approach and directly address the body, support the body with building capacity to feel safe and teach the body that it is safe through different methods. And then that can, move up the chain and affect your emotional experience and then affect your belief. Or maybe then it opens up, it makes it way easier to change the belief on a cognitive level now that your body
Yeah.
is in more of a state of security.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a lot there. And I agree with it. I might just disagree on maybe the way that you approach it. We're just like approaching it differently. I'd agree with most of it, not all of what you said. Um, I think for me as a hypnotist, right, I'm always thinking about what's the unconscious problem. So, and I do address like cognitive stuff, and maybe we have different definitions of cognitive. Um, I do think we definitely need to address the cognitive. I find that usually though, um, what's not being said, what's not in awareness, is actually the real problem. And so the meaning making map is largely, I think, largely unconscious. At
Hmm.
least, so I guess in my experience, it's like if I try to reframe a thing by changing my language, it does kind of help. It depends on what it is, right? It could help, but it actually doesn't feel real. Um, and it's not until I address whatever the underlying issue is, and then, which I think is the body is the subconscious mind, in my view. Until I address the underlying issue, um, the reframe, the new meaning that I'm trying to make doesn't become real. But once I do it, it's like, oh, like of course, like this reframe, this meaning that's much more positive, like of course is true.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I agree
Yeah.
with that.
Okay, great. Cool. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, because sometimes I've had this experience plenty of times that my mind will understand something years before my body, years before it sinks down into some sort of emotional experience. And 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 in a way, that's created more inner conflict because
Yeah.
now I have this cognitive awareness that my experience doesn't match at all. And I'm like, what the fuck's wrong with me?
Right.
And
Right.
that's, I think a lot of people have that experience. And
Yeah.
that's also one of the limitations of taking a strictly cognitive approach is that it's that then it's like you're creating more dissonance in the system without supporting like some sort of deeper integration.
That's an interesting point. I haven't thought about that. Because what I was thinking is like it has to come through the your cognitive awareness first before it can be embodied. Would you agree?
I don't know.
Okay.
I have said that for many years, which I stole from Ken Wilber. He always said that the cognitive line of development goes first. So it's always you always understand something with your mind first, then it can sink into your emotions and body and the rest of your experience. I don't know. I still mostly want to agree with that, but I don't know. I think
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, maybe
Now that I'm
there.
kind of disagreeing with myself, because there are instances so like there's definitely sessions that I have or hopefully that I've given that like there's we don't know what's happening on an unconscious level, but there's something shifting. I have no idea what it is cognitively.
Yeah.
Like I have zero fucking clue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that exactly. And that happens, I think, a lot in my life too. It happens a lot in therapy. And then if you think about psychedelics, that's like almost all that is. It's like this impossible to process the immensity of that experience cognitively, but it's affecting you. You're affected. It's affecting, I think, your body. It's affecting your emotions. It's changing your brain potentially. And and then maybe you have some sort of cognitive framework for how to process the experience. And hopefully you do. And I think that's like maybe a crucial part of integration.
The psychoeducation part that I'm weak at.
You're
But
weak
you,
at it?
I think so. I mean, I think I'm getting better. Um, I don't know. You saw I actually posted a new video that I haven't posted in a while, but I created some stuff about beliefs actually,
Mm.
and doing that type of belief work, which I think is very important, especially if you have religious trauma or come from religion. Um, where was I going with that? What were we talking about?
Like having some sort of experience that it comes in somatically or emotionally or fit or whatever.
Yeah,
And then later the cognitive line can catch up to that.
I thought we were talking about something after that too.
Oh,
Well,
psychedelics.
okay.
Uh,
Psychedelics,
uh-huh. Integration.
integration. All right. Well, I just lost my total train of thought here. Okay.
And then you were talking about the video that you
My I
posted.
was just shamelessly self-promoting. That's what was happening unconsciously. I was just watch my new video. Uh yeah, I don't know. That's right.
But yeah, so I think actually this has been a more recent development for me in the last couple of years that I started to have more experiences that I couldn't make sense of in the moment. So meaning I didn't actually have a cognitive understanding or awareness of why this was happening, what was going on, an emotional experience usually. Why is this coming up for me? But then I would trust this movement of divine wisdom through that experience that something's happening. Something's happening and it's important to happen and I don't need to know. And so much of my process now is about feeling things. It depends, but a lot of it is feeling things that I don't even know what I'm feeling. Like I'm feeling a feeling, but I don't know what the feeling's about.
Right. Right.
And that's totally fine to me now. It's that used to be not fine. That used to cause me great distress, and I would try to figure everything out. And now it's like, oh, this is grief. And then I cry. Why are you crying? I don't know.
Oh yeah, I've had a lot of that.
I could give some reasons I suspect, but it feels deeper than that sometimes. And so then so yeah, I don't even know. So I think in that instance, is that my emotional line of development leading and then cognitive catches up? I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah. Or maybe it never does. Uh,
Yeah. Like maybe I never know what that was about. But I needed to feel it and I feel better having felt it.
yeah. Yeah.
So I'm sensing, well, I'm getting tired. So
Yeah. This is
so
yeah.
what I want to do is, we spent most of this time talking about wholeness and this becoming whole or being already whole, and we've been on lots of tangents connected to that, but it's all connected to that, I think, where the art of comes in. Bringing it back is and this is this is me. This is my view. I'm not sure if you agree, but you did like the name.
Sure.
Um, so I don't mostly, I don't like comparing humans to computers. And I don't think that the problem solution frame is sufficient by itself. It needs the accompaniment of some of the things we talked about in order to address the deeper identification with having a separate sense of self that is fundamentally flawed. And and I think that most people problem solution is a math problem. That's how math works, right?
Sure. Sure.
And maybe how science works, kind of. I mean, it's a little more complex than that, um, but it's formulaic
Hmm. Mhm.
and repeatable. That's the whole idea. And I think that to reduce healing and psychotherapy to math, to some sort of formulaic equation, is harmful. I don't think it actually captures this other thing that's taking place that's completely out of our control. And this is the conversation we were having last week, I think, about learning to surf the waves of
Hmm.
life. It's like it's not an either or thing. It's not like it's either science or art. I think that or math or art or whatever. Art can contain science or math within it, but it can also go off into the abstract. Science can't, science and math can't contain art within them in the same way because they don't allow room for stuff to get surreal and
Mhm.
abstract.
Hmm.
So to me, this process is um, it's like we do have power. We have power in the process of healing. We can we can become a conscious participant in our lives and the direction that we want to go and all of that. But ultimately, you, me, anybody, we don't have control over when something shifts. And maybe you disagree with me on that because,
I might disagree.
yeah, because, and maybe I'm disagreeing with myself. Um, because, well, and this is non-dual. This is why it's art. Because because the non-dual is art. Dualism is science or math, because again, problem solution, either
Hmm.
or.
Hmm. Hmm.
So so to me, the non-dual contains the dual. Art contains the math and science. So
Hmm.
when I say that we don't have control over when something shifts, I'm kind of disagreeing with myself because sometimes we do.
Yeah,
Sometimes you can do something and it has an immediate effect.
absolutely.
And so that is true. But I think what I'm saying is maybe more of a big picture overarching frame of the life path of healing because it never ends is that we don't have control over what happens in life. Again, to some degree we might, but like in a more absolute sense, I don't know when I'm going to die. I don't have control over that. So I don't have control over life. That's my simplistic
Sure.
oversimplification, but yeah. Um and and so this is where surrender comes into play. And there's like a huge misunderstanding about what it is, which I had for many years myself, but that it's people think that surrender or acceptance, that they mean that you don't do something. And that's not what it means. This it's not this sort of surrender. This is like spiritual surrender. This doesn't mean it's not the same as surrendering in a conflict or something.
Mhm.
It's not giving up. It is a type of giving up, but it's giving up control that you never had anyway. And and so it's not about not doing things, because doing things is part of what your inner wisdom is guiding you to do most of the time, or a lot of times. It could either be guiding you to do things or it could be guiding you to not do things. It's non-dual.
I guess the way I understand it is you can do things from an energy of acceptance and surrender, or you can do things from an energy of, we'll call it resistance.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well said. And so so I love the analogy of surfing the waves of life because you have power in that equation. You can become attuned to the wave and decide what movement to execute.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do certain movements that are either in alignment with the wave, acceptance of the wave, or you can try and fight against the wave and see where that gets you.
Sure. Could I could I point out something?
Sure.
I noticed you used the word equation when you didn't like the analogy of math and science.
Yeah, what did I say?
I don't.
I
I
remember
can't
saying
even. I can't even.
I remember saying it, but I don't remember what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Like
In
that
relation, it had to be
power,
in relation to surfing
like
and
like
uh,
powers, having that you have power over the like you have power over your movements on the wave or whatever, and that is part
mhm.
of the equation.
Yeah, something like that.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm not anti-equations. I'm anti hmm, equations only and no art.
I agree with that. I agree. I It's interesting because I was having a conversation with a friend the other day. Um, and he's like an engineer, so he thinks in these types of like super scientific, right, like experiments. And he was relating that to like psychology and how like, you can therapy can be like, dumb, almost dumbed down to a science. I don't think that's what he was saying exactly, but I think the way that he was wording it, it could have been implied, and I kind of maybe picked up on that and hyper focused on that. And obsessed, but I disagree with that. I'm like, no, but it's also relational. Like we're also human. But it's interesting now that I'm hearing the other side. I'm like, there's like another part of me that disagrees. I'm like, well, there is a time and place for an equation, but flexibility as well. Like I guess like when it comes to like trying like a beginner, like a total beginner, I see equations as almost like they're like training wheels. Like at first you have to learn how to surf. Like you have to learn about the way I don't know anything about surfing, right? But you have to learn how to balance and you learn how to paddle or whatever. You learn when the waves are going to come and whatever. And I'm sure there's a science to that. But then eventually you start to get in tune with the wave, the board, your body, and like the synergy of all of that and the flow. And then it becomes art, right?
Yeah, I had a thought. Oh, yep. And so I think that this is a huge, huge, huge limitation of the field of psychotherapy and psychology at this time is we're in this transition. We've been in this transition for too long of transitioning out of the medical model approach to mental health. And the only people who aren't transitioning out of that are um, I
Psychiatrist.
psychiatrists, old people
Old
who
people. Actually, a lot of psychologists too.
uh-huh,
They,
and insurance companies.
yeah. That's why I actually hesitate when you said like, well, we're transitioning. I'm like, are we though? Maybe a
Well,
subset, perhaps, but
yeah, I mean, it's like I think actually the majority of therapists, we'll say private practice therapists out there, don't like this model.
oh, okay.
It
That's good
does,
to
it's that seems to be true to me,
okay.
anecdotally. I don't know.
Okay.
Um, I think it- it's like, it's been more than 20 years of people criticizing this model and saying probably a lot more, but definitely in the last 20 years, people have been criticizing it and pointing out the limitations of it. And so the field itself has already, I think, the center of gravity of the field has kind of moved out of that, but is still tethered to the past because of these antiquated notions and just what corporations and insurance companies want to do because it's way harder to create systems of um, money, of charging people based on what art, the art of psychotherapy. It's like
Yeah.
they want it all to be measurable.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so they're treating the mind, the psyche, like it's the body. They're treating it like it exists in a dualistic world. And so then it's about problem and solution. And that keeps it limited to a math equation.
Yeah.
And it doesn't create room for the reality of what a human being is. And if you don't do that, if you don't create room for that, then what are you doing? You can have some success with just implementing equation after equation after equation. You will have some success with some people, and maybe a lot of success with some people, but there will be a lot of people that'll be ineffective with. It won't get through to the deeper issue. And the and
Agreed.
the and the deeper issue is one of um, it's not replicable. It's art. Every person is an art piece, and it's going to show up in a
I agree.
completely unique way that is impossible to measure. You can the only way you can measure it is through subjective experience and observation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're still trying to push, depression and anxiety measures as if it means something about, the way I think about it, as if it means something about the relationship that this person has with themselves. Doesn't mean anything about that, especially the weekly ones. It's like it can fluctuate based on anything. And then the assumption is that painful feelings are bad. But you could be way further along in your process of healing and be deep in some pain
Yeah.
and then score higher on PHQ-9 or whatever. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and it doesn't mean that you've regressed.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like it's kind of like saying, "Hey, we're gonna rip off the band-aid and it's gonna hurt, right? And now we're gonna measure, how painful was that? Oh, that was like a 9 out of 10. Well, before when you had the band-aid, it was like a 2 out of 10. Oh my gosh, we measured it. It's terrible. But like, it's like, dude, sometimes you need to rip off the band-aid or whatever analogy you want to use. It's like, yeah, sometimes it's gonna hurt, not all the time, but yeah,
Yeah, they're not often they're not measuring what they think they're measuring. And
yeah.
so then to tracking progress, that creates problems with tracking progress, and it creates problems in the entire field because because now academia and research is all set up to use measures. They're using these measures.
Well,
Sorry, go
wasn't it
ahead.
always? I thought.
Oh, well, yeah, probably.
Okay.
And it depends on the type of research. I mean, you can use subjective measures and stuff, but when it comes to, again, the center of gravity of the field right now, it's still all about evidence-based practices, and I think that that's harmful.
Yeah,
If you are training a bunch of therapists and you're telling them use these practices because the evidence shows that they work with these mental illnesses, it sets up the whole frame incorrectly.
I agree. It makes it makes every other therapy orientation or modality seem like, oh, these aren't evidence based. So why the hell would you learn that? We want to do what the research shows, science,
Uh-huh.
and it just holds this weight. Yeah, it frames it totally unfairly, right? And there's so much information that's missing. Like, how are these studies done, right? What? Yeah. Anyways,
Yeah. And you
um,
can have, I mean, I don't know how many it is. I'll just say millions. I don't know if that's true, but you could have millions of people do ayahuasca, and the vast majority of them say it's life-changing, but that's not evidence.
that is odd, man. I've always wondered, like, at what point, like, if you have enough anecdotes, like, at what point does like that must count for something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Anyways,
this system, it doesn't create room or validate the reality of direct experience, which is subjective.
right, right,
And I get why, I think, because if you only base it on subjective experience, but your subjective experience is skewed because your perception isn't, you have unconscious lenses that are skewing your perception, well, then you're not going to get an accurate read on what's happening. But again, but this is a foundational assumption that we don't have the ability to see reality clearly as humans. And so we need to rely on tools, objective measures, reduce everything to an equation.
right.
But I don't believe that's true. I think that we all have the ability to separate from our lenses and see reality clearly-ish.
Clearer.
Clearer, yeah.
Yeah.
We see reality to the degree that our physiology mm, allows us to, or I just so what I'm getting caught up on in my mind is that I believe that humans can perceive absolute reality, like the absolute. We can see it, we can perceive it, the non-dual. We can see it clearly. But I do believe that there are limitations based on something, and maybe it's my physiology, maybe it's the evolutionary stage of humanity, maybe it's an energetic thing. I don't know. But I think that there are an infinite number of things that I can't see that are out there, whether that's different dimensions of things going on, or like beings that I can't perceive, or whatever.
Mm.
That so that's why I'm hesitating, because I think we can see reality clearly, but it's like we're just seeing whatever humans are able to see. That makes sense.
Maybe, yeah. And I think maybe, what you mentioned about the whole other dimensions and spiritual planes or entities and whatnot, that could be definitely a different conversation, another conversation for another time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. It's been great. And we will see you next time.
So yeah.